Hello and welcome to Seminar 7, Virtual Worlds, brought to you asynchronously by Warren Griffiths and Tyler Pollard. For class EDUC 5199, Special Topics in Education and Digital Technologies at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. Today is November 12th, 2013. The paper we will be presenting today to you is called Impact of Native, Non-Native Speaker Interaction Through Video Communication and Second Life on Students' Intercultural Communicative Competency. The authors are Krista Jarigi, I'm hoping I'm presenting that correctly, Sylvia Canto. It was presented a little more than a year ago at the Eurocall conference in Gothenburg, Sweden. The Eurocall conference was based all around call. And as this dynamic field gains recognition and weight, this conference sought to establish the current state of the art. As I mentioned, the authors are Krista Jarigi and Sylvia Canto. Both of them are lecturers and professors at Utrecht University in Holland. And some key terms we need to know before jumping into this piece of research. SCMC, Synchronous Computer Mediated Communication. This could take the form of what we're doing right now, watching a presentation within Adobe Connect. Second Life. Second Life is a three-dimensional online virtual world used, amongst other things and other people, as a platform for education, colleges, universities, and libraries, and government entities. The term video communication, or VC, within this paper, the video tool of choice is Adobe Connect. I'm assuming everyone's fairly familiar with that at this moment. But there are other forms of video communication, including Skype, FaceTime. Negotiation of meaning is a process that speakers go through to reach a clear understanding of each other. For example, the learner will be asking for clarification or rephrasing or confirmation of what they think a particular phrase or word means. In the classroom, this can be done through activities such as jigsaw readings and listenings, group story building, communicative crosswords. Once again, they go through the process of shoring up their understanding. In this graphic, we see a man on the left and the right. The man on the left is the language learner, and the man on the right is the native speaker. My father, bad. What? You don't like your father? My father, very bad. Did your dad do something wrong? No, my father, very bad. You say he's very bad. Oh, he's ill. Two theories that this paper and the research within are based on are the socio-constructivist theories of Lev Vygotsky and the interactionist theories, particularly ones that are presented by Mackey and Polio's paper from 2009. Now, I know that most of us are fairly familiar with the Vygotsky social constructivist theory, but I figured it's good that we just talk about it quickly because it is very important to the research. Vygotsky's theory of social cultural learning highlights the role of social and cultural interaction play in the learning process. This theory does not have stages per se. Vygotsky's theory states that knowledge is co-constructed and that individuals learn from one another. It is called a social constructivist theory because, in Vygotsky's opinion, the learner must be engaged in the learning process. Learning happens with the assistance. The other theory is interactivist theories within SLA, based strongly on Vygotsky's work. This theory mentions that interaction with adult plays an important part in children's language acquisition and also acquisition of adolescents and adults. Second language learners gain proficiency when they interact with more advanced speakers of the language, for example, their teachers or their peers. And once again, it takes on a scaffolding model through repetition, modeling, and linguistic simplification.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the background of the study. The paper that we are analyzing and presenting today came out of something called the NIFLAR project. NIFLAR stands for Networked Interaction in Foreign Language Acquisition and Research. It was a project founded by the European Commission in 2009, and it was coordinated by the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands. 8 universities and 3 secondary schools were involved in the project, both in and outside of Europe. The targeted languages of the project were Dutch, Russian, Portuguese, and Spanish. The language you see here in bold represents the language that the L2 learners were working towards improving in the article. The starting point for NIFLAR was a close inspection of what was happening within the language classrooms at the time, both in high schools and universities around the world. Several problem areas were identified, such as the predominant use of teacher-centered approaches to instruction, how many of the activities in the classroom were based solely on the textbook, the continuing stress on grammar and vocabulary, the lack of opportunities for students to engage in meaningful interaction with each other, and the limited presence or non-existence of native speakers in the classroom. It was decided that learning a language is much more than just learning grammar and vocabulary, and that it is important for learners to develop their communicative competence as well as their intercultural communicative competence when they meet someone from different countries. NIFLAR also looked for opportunities that ICT offers for interaction and for collaborative learning, and how ICT affects motivation. All these things that I've mentioned were the driving force behind the research of NIFLAR. This brings us to the aim of the project, which was how to make foreign language education more authentic, relevant, and rewarding through the use of blended learning opportunities, and how to provide more opportunities for real-life and virtual synchronous communication with native speakers of the target language. As a solution to the problems that were presented in the last slide, NIFLAR came up with a blended learning system which combined face-to-face learning in the classroom with opportunities for students to engage in networked interaction with native speakers of the target language. Social interaction was deemed central to the learning process. The task designers also put a renewed focus on the learner, which included the interests the learners had at the time, the needs that they had for learning, and how to promote collaboration to enrich their learning context. Lastly, there was a focus on ICC, which Warren defined earlier as basically the understanding of people from other countries and how to be aware of the differences we have with other cultures and how to accept them. Within the NIFLAR project, they decided upon 2 different environments through which students could directly communicate with more expert peers in the target language. The first one was Adobe Connect, which you guys are all familiar with and don't need much of an introduction to. But basically, it's a video web communication environment where students from various places can meet and collaborate with each other, whether it is through talking, working together, sharing files, etc., all the while being able to see each other through the webcam. The second platform was Second Life, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with as well, which is a 3D virtual world, which is also widely used for language education around the world. In Second Life, students participate as avatars who then can engage in textual or oral interactions with other avatars. The good thing about Second Life for second language learners is they don't see who they're talking to, which is good for them to promote interaction. Both of these environments are great. They provide an interactional virtual space which seem to be beneficial for learning and achieving communicative and intercultural competence as users can experiment and interact with a variety of norms of social interaction. Okay, at this point, Warren and I would like to invite you to click on the following link, which will take you to a short 4-minute YouTube video, which will demonstrate how to use Second Life, basically. It's about an organization called Cypress Chat, which uses Second Life to assist people with second language acquisition online. For those of you who feel comfortable with Second Life or have used it before, then feel free to just skip this. But for those of you who don't know, it's definitely worthwhile. And as you watch the video, keep in mind all the opportunities a student would have to develop their communicative competence within Second Life and also their intercultural communicative competence. So just keep that in mind as you're watching the video. As you can see, both environments, Adobe Connect and Second Life, have tremendous potential, and it allows students to easily connect with each other and to carry out interaction activities together. However, NIFLAR is not primarily concerned about either Adobe Connect or about Second Life. Their main concern is about the tasks that are designed within the NIFLAR project and which are used to enhance language learning. Tasks in NIFLAR make it possible for language learners to interact with native speaker peers, and this communication is deemed very important for the development of intercultural communicative competence of language learners. And of course, this includes the understanding of the culture of the target language and the understanding of the similarities and differences of the cultures compared to other cultures. To make all this possible, Adobe Connect and Second Life are seen as more of a tool that can be extremely helpful. Both of these platforms provide the opportunities for students to get together and transcend the classroom. Based on the short video of Second Life, you can easily see how the users can create their own cultural context within virtual worlds, which is the really exciting part about Second Life. And this will not only influence the interaction, but also influence the intercultural communicative competence of the learners as they walk around and meet other different avatars. Okay, up to this point in our presentation, Warren has provided you with a brief explanation of some of the essential terminology or keywords used in the article that we are responsible for analyzing this week, which was again entitled Impact of Native Non-Native Speaker Interaction Through Video Communication and Second Life on Students' Intercultural Communicative Competence. After that, I was able to provide you with a brief background of the entire NIFLAR project, which Warren and I both feel is very important because our article is based on just one small case study under the NIFLAR umbrella. Just to give you more of an idea of the scope of the NIFLAR project, a total of 60 tasks were designed for use within Adobe Connect and Second Life amongst the 8 universities and 3 secondary schools involved with this study. The article we are presenting today involved only 2 of these schools and only 5 tasks out of the total of 60 tasks under the NIFLAR project. Also, only 1 of the 4 target languages was used in this case study, which was Spanish. Okay, now I'd like to talk to you about the method of this case study. Our article involved a total of 42 students from the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands and the University of Valencia in Spain, who participated in the NIFLAR project for a total of 3 months in 2010. 21 of these students were involved with Adobe Connect and 21 were involved with Second Life. At the University of Utrecht, this project was integrated as a blending learning experience for first-year Spanish language students at the B1 proficiency level. At the University of Valencia in Spain, the project was integrated as part of a course at the master's level called Hispanic Studies, and all those participants assumed the role of student teachers. The groups in Adobe and Second Life each consisted of 14 foreign language students from the University of Utrecht that participated in couples or groups of 2 with 7 native speakers of Spanish from the University of Valencia. As mentioned, just 5 tasks were used for this study. The tasks were in line with the Spanish course book used at the University of Utrecht and dealt with the corresponding units of study which were used within the classroom. As well, The language objectives were heavily loaded with cultural aspects, which were hoped to trigger interaction amongst the participating students from both countries. The data used in this study represented only 3 groups involved in this case study. The first 2 groups were composed of a triad, 2 L1 Dutch students of Spanish from the University of Utrecht, and 1 L1 Spanish student teacher from the University of Valencia in Spain. There was also a third group, which was the control group, which was composed of 4 L1 Dutch students from the University of Utrecht, who carried out the same 5 tasks, but only during face-to-face classroom time. They weren't able to use Adobe Connect or Second Life, and this control group didn't have any exposure to a native speaker of Spanish during the course. Each of the 3 groups involved with this study were responsible for the 5 tasks that I mentioned before, and they were given at an interval of once a week, and each of these tasks were adapted to the specific context depending on which group it was for. The 3 contexts were number 1, Second Life, number 2, the Adobe Connect platform, and number 3, the classroom setting. Each of the 3 groups met with the teacher twice a week during face-to-face classroom time. It was only on the 3rd meeting each week where the students were responsible for getting online and doing computer-mediated interaction with a native speaker from Spain. This involved the first 2 groups, the first 2 triads, which were involved with either Adobe Connect or Second Life. The 3rd group had to instead attend a 3rd class with the same teacher, which limited their time to that of face-to-face contact time with their teacher inside the classroom context. Okay, on this slide you can see the 5 tasks which were used as part of this case study that the article is based on. You can see that based on the description here that each task had the students do something different. So when they went into Adobe Connect or into Second Life, they had to then finish the task and there would be some product at the end. So the first one here, you can see they had to visit an apartment, which they are meant to share. They had to talk about themselves and exchange cultural information triggered by the pictures. And they had to choose an ongoing option, for example, going to the cinema or a museum or just going for a walk in the city. The second one had to do with people and adventure, where the participants had to plan a holiday and reflect on past holiday experiences. The third one was about movie celebrity people. They had to play different roles and give a brief script based on that. The fourth task here, people with heart, they had to impersonate different characters and experience the reactions caused on others. And the fifth one, which was the most exciting task of the 5, according to the feedback from the students, and this was to participate in a cultural television game style contest between a Dutch and a Spanish team. Based on the 5 tasks that were assigned during this case study, you can see how they were designed for communicative competence and intercultural communicative competence. The tasks elicit the following. This is just some of the things that they looked at when they were designing the tasks. The opportunities for contrasting and comparing one's own beliefs and habits and those of others. The awareness and reflection not only of the target culture, but of their own cultural habits and beliefs. An exposure to rich target language input and meaningful target language use. And the requirement for the learners to focus on form and have clearly defined communicative outcomes.
And now for the results. When looking at negotiation of meaning and task number 2, people and adventure, we see that the group who are in the virtual world of Second Life and those that are doing video communication with Adobe Connect had a larger degree of negotiations compared to the control group at only 2. The summary of negotiations and triggers, as we see, negotiations, trigger words, word recognition, misuse and misunderstanding, and pronunciation. much more negotiation of meaning is happening within a virtual or video communication format. At this moment, let's have a look at the results for Task 5. This task generated a high level of curiosity towards many aspects of other culture, and participants engaged in rich exchanges. In this example, a photograph of a rucksack hanging from a flagpole was used as a conversation trigger. This is a well-known custom in the Netherlands, meaning that a child living there had passed the state exams at the secondary education level. The Spanish team had to guess its meaning during the quiz. In the negotiation sequences, the Dutch team provided some explanation. This was not only this was not only possible due to the setting of the task, but also the fact that the language learner's supervisor was a native speaker. In the control group, the dynamics were different. There was no contrasting of opinions between the members of the team to reach an agreement over the correct answer. And even when their answers were wrong, not much curiosity was detected to find out more about the topic. The next slide will show an example of this exchange.
Okay, in conclusion, the results of this qualitative analysis prove that the environments offered through synchronous computer-mediated communication via Adobe Connect and Second Life appear to elicit a higher degree of rich participation than the traditional educational setting, represented by the control group, where students had no interaction with native peers. In the article, it describes how avatars were recorded being teleported to the pizzeria within Second Life to finish task number 2, which, if you can recall correctly, was to discuss holiday options. However, when the avatars got to the pizzeria, they started chatting about some movie posters which were hanging on the walls. And they were interested in who watched the movies and who didn't. Later, their holiday destination prompted conversations about seatbelts and driver's licenses. These conversations were triggered by the actions of the avatars, which resulted in a high level of topic switching within Second Life. The conversations within Adobe Connect also provided similar opportunities for negotiated interaction, which in turn provided the students with opportunities to develop not only their communicative competence, but also their intercultural communicative competence. Before we end our presentation, Warren and I would like to leave you with a video of 3 students from the University of Utrecht who were interviewed shortly after they finished their Spanish course. By watching the video, it'll give you more of an idea of how these students reacted to the learning environments, which were set up through Adobe Connect and Second Life. So we hope you enjoy the video. Okay, that's the end of our presentation. Both Warren and I hope that you have enjoyed it. If you'd like to find more information about this case study or about the NIFLR project, you can visit their website at the following URL.